The silence in the grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel wasn't peaceful. It was the suffocating quiet of 300 people realizing they were witnessing a suicide, not a celebration. Johnny Blackwood was still on one knee, a 4-carat canary diamond glinting under the chandeliers, held out toward his weeping mistress, Serena. He had the microphone in his other hand. He had just declared her the love of his life. He had just told the world his wife, Emily, was the past. But Johnny didn't hear the gasps shifting in tone. He didn't hear the heavy oak doors at the back of the room groan open. He didn't know that the woman walking in wasn't just carrying divorce papers. She was holding the deed to the very floor he was kneeling on. The guillotine was about to drop, and Johnny was the only one smiling. It was October 14th, a Tuesday, but not just any Tuesday. It was the night of the Blackwood & Cumbert annual charity gala. In the high-stakes world of New York venture capital, this was the event of the season. Johnny Blackwood stood at the edge of the balcony overlooking the ballroom, adjusting the cuffs of his bespoke Tom Ford tuxedo. At 42, Johnny was the picture of modern success. He was handsome in a sharp, predatory way, graying temples that suggested wisdom, and a smile that suggested he knew something you didn't. He checked his reflection in the glass, smoothing back his hair. "You look nervous," a voice purred from behind him. It was Serena Kyle. At 24, she was luminous. She wore a dress made of crimson silk that clung to her like a second skin, a stark contrast to the conservative navy blue gowns his wife, Emily, usually favored. Serena was everything Johnny convinced himself he deserved: youth, fire, and unadulterated adoration. "Not nervous," Johnny lied, turning to take her hands. "Just anticipating. Tonight changes everything, Serena. No more sneaking around the Hamptons house. No more separate flights to Paris. After tonight, everyone will know." Serena bit her lip, her eyes wide with a mix of excitement and apprehension. "But Emily, you said she was in Zurich." "She is," Johnny scoffed, checking his Rolex. "Her flight doesn't land until tomorrow morning. She's obsessed with that merger with the Swiss banking firm. By the time she touches down, the news will be everywhere. I'll have the PR team spin it as a conscious uncoupling where I found my true soulmate. Emily is a businesswoman, Serena. She hates scandal. She'll sign the papers quietly to protect the stock price and fade into the background." Johnny truly believed this. In his mind, Emily was a utility. She was the woman who had helped him build the company in the early days. Sure, crunching the numbers while he charmed the investors. But she was boring. She was safe. She was the foundation, and Johnny was tired of looking at the basement. He wanted to look at the view. "I love you, Johnny," Serena whispered. "Showtime," he winked. He led her down the grand staircase. The applause began instantly. Johnny drank it in. These were his people, competitors, sycophants, politicians. They all wanted to be close to the Blackwood fortune. For the first hour, Johnny played the role of the benevolent king. He shook hands with Senator Reeves. He laughed at a bad joke from the CEO of Omnicorp. But his eyes kept darting to the clock. 9 Saturday p.m. That was the moment. He signaled the band to stop. The jazz quartet faded out, replaced by a low hum of anticipation. Johnny took the stage, the microphone heavy in his sweaty palm. He pulled Serena up with him. A ripple of confusion went through the crowd. Wives whispered behind champagne flutes. "Where is Emily? Who is the girl in the red dress?" "Ladies and gentlemen," Johnny's voice boomed, echoing off the vaulted ceilings. "Thank you for coming tonight. We've raised millions for the Arts Foundation. But I want to make tonight about something more personal, about truth." He looked at Serena. The room went dead silent. "For the last 15 years, I have lived a life of obligation," Johnny said, his voice dropping to a practiced, emotional register. I built a company. I built a reputation. But I forgot to build a life for myself. I forgot what passion felt like until I met this woman standing beside me. The shock in the room was palpable. It was a physical wave. This wasn't just an affair. This was a public execution of his marriage. Emily and I, we have grown apart, Johnny continued, rewriting history in real time. We are essentially leading separate lives. But Serena has brought the light back into my world. He dropped to one knee. A collective gasp sucked the air out of the room. Phones were raised. Flashes popped like strobe lights. This was going viral before he even hit the floor. He pulled the velvet box from his pocket and snapped it open. The diamond was massive, vulgar, and brilliant. "Serena Kyle," Johnny said, loud enough for the back row to hear. "I don't want to hide anymore. I want to start our life tonight. Will you marry me?" Serena covered her mouth, tears streaming down her face. Tears of victory. She nodded frantically. "Yes. Yes, Johnny." He stood up, sliding the ring onto her finger, and embraced her. The applause was scattered, awkward. People were too stunned to clap, too horrified to look away. Johnny didn't care. He kissed her, deep and long, claiming his prize. He pulled away, beaming at the crowd, expecting them to rally behind his courage. "To the future," he toasted, raising his glass. And then the sound system screeched, a high-pitched feedback whine that forced everyone to cover their ears. The massive double doors at the entrance of the ballroom didn't just open. They were thrown wide with a force that rattled the hinges. Standing there, framed by the hallway light, was not a ghost. It was Emily Blackwood. But it wasn't the Emily Johnny knew. The Emily he knew wore comfortable shoes and cardigans. This woman was wearing a structural, obsidian black gown by Alexander McQueen that looked like armor. Her hair, usually in a messy bun, was slicked back, sharp as a blade. She wore no jewelry except for a single vintage Cartier Panther brooch. And behind her, 4 men in dark suits, and behind them, 2 uniformed NYPD officers. Johnny's smile faltered. "Emily," he whispered, the microphone still live, catching his fear. She didn't scream. She didn't cry. She began to walk. The crowd parted for her like the Red Sea. The sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor was the only sound in the room. Click, click, click. It was the ticking of a bomb that had already exploded. Johnny tried to recover. He stepped forward to the edge of the stage, putting a protective arm around Serena, who looked like a deer in headlights. "Emily," Johnny said, his voice booming over the speakers, trying to regain control of the narrative. I didn't expect you back from Zurich until tomorrow. We need to talk, but not here. Not in front of everyone. You're making a scene." Emily stopped 10 feet from the stage. She looked up at him. Her expression wasn't angry. It was bored. One of the men in suits behind her, Johnny recognized him immediately as Martin Sterling, the most vicious corporate litigator in Manhattan, stepped forward and handed Emily a sleek iPad. "I'm not here to talk, Johnny," Emily said. Her voice wasn't amplified by a microphone, but she projected with such icy clarity that the back of the room heard every syllable. "And I'm certainly not here to save your reputation. You managed to destroy that all on your own in the last 5 minutes." "Go home, Emily," Johnny hissed, covering the mic with his hand. "We will settle this with the lawyers." "Oh, we are settling it right now," Emily said. She tapped the screen of the iPad. Suddenly, the massive projection screen behind the stage, which had been displaying the charity's logo, flickered. It changed to a live feed of a bank transfer document. "What is this?" Johnny demanded. "That," Emily said, pointing to the screen, is the confirmation of the trigger clause in our prenuptial agreement. Do you remember the morality and public image clause? Section 8, paragraph C. Johnny froze. He vaguely remembered skimming it 15 years ago. He thought it was standard boilerplate about not getting arrested. It states, Emily recited from memory, that in the event of public infidelity causing reputational damage to the Blackwood Trust, the offending party forfeits all unvested equity and, this is the fun part, transfers immediate control of all marital assets to the injured party to prevent financial hemorrhage. She took a step closer. You just proposed to your mistress on a live stream, Johnny. You didn't just cheat. You broadcasted it to the world. You triggered the clause. That won't hold up in court, Johnny shouted, sweat beading on his forehead. I built this company. I am Blackwood. Actually, Emily interrupted, you're the face. I'm the architect. Who do you think structured the loans? Who managed the patent filings? Who bailed you out when you gambled the operating capital on crypto in 2022? Me. She gestured to the screen again. The image changed. It was a property deed. Now, about this proposal, Emily said, her eyes shifting to Serena. Serena shrank back, clutching the ring. It's a lovely ring, Serena. Truly. But I'm afraid it's stolen property. He bought it, Serena squeaked. With the corporate Amex, Emily corrected, which, as of 3 minutes ago, has been flagged for embezzlement. Johnny, you purchased a $250,000 ring using company funds. That's not just grounds for divorce. That's grand larceny. The crowd gasped. Johnny looked at the audience. He saw judgment. He saw people pulling out their phones to record. You're bluffing, Johnny snarled. You can't touch me. I'm not done, Emily said calmly. Gentlemen? The 2 police officers stepped forward. Mr. Blackwood, one of the officers said, we have a warrant for the seizure of digital assets related to the fraud investigation initiated by the board of directors. The board? Johnny looked at Emily. I am the chairman of the board. Not as of this morning, Emily smiled, a terrifying small smile. I called an emergency meeting via Zoom while you were getting your tuxedo fitted. Since I own 51% of the voting shares, something you forgot because you never read the fine print of the family trust, I voted to remove you, effective immediately. Johnny felt his knees go weak. He looked at Serena. She was looking at him not with love, but with horror. She was looking at a man who had just gone from a billionaire to a liability in 60 seconds. And finally, Emily said, looking around the room, I'd like everyone to enjoy the champagne. I paid for it, after all. But Johnny, you and Ms. Kyle need to leave. You can't kick me out of my own party, Johnny screamed, his face turning purple. It's not your party, Emily said, and this isn't your hotel suite anymore. I bought the debt on the penthouse this afternoon. The locks have already been changed. Your bags are on the curb. Well, not bags, trash bags. I didn't want to waste the Louis Vuitton. She pointed to the exit. Get out. Johnny stood there, paralyzing shock vibrating through his body. He looked at the crowd, his friends, his peers. No one made eye contact. They were all looking at Emily. They were looking at the new power. Come on, Johnny, Serena hissed, grabbing his arm, trying to pull him away before the police laid hands on him. Let's go. My car, Johnny muttered. My Porsche is downstairs. Emily laughed. It was a dark, rich sound. The company lease. I cancelled it an hour ago. Tow truck took it. Try Uber. Johnny Blackwood, the man who thought he was a king, stumbled down the stairs of the stage. He walked through the parting crowd, the sound of his own humiliation ringing in his ears. As he reached the double doors, he looked back. Emily was standing center stage. She took the microphone Johnny had dropped. "Sorry for the interruption, everyone," she said, her voice smooth as silk. "Please continue dancing. The drinks are on me." The band struck up a lively tune. The doors closed on Johnny's back, but outside on the sidewalk of Fifth Avenue, in the cold October air, the nightmare was only just beginning. Johnny stood next to a pile of black garbage bags containing his Italian suits, holding the hand of a mistress who was already texting her backup plan, realizing he had absolutely nowhere to go. And Emily? She hadn't even played her ace card yet. The sidewalk outside the Plaza Hotel was cold, but Johnny felt a different kind of chill. It was the freeze of absolute social isolation. He stood next to 4 hefty bags, filled with his Italian wool suits and cashmere sweaters. The wind whipped his tuxedo jacket, the only thing he had left that looked like money. Serena was furiously tapping on her phone a few feet away. The glow of the screen illuminated a face that was no longer looking at him with adoration. It was a look of calculation. "Serena," Johnny said, his voice hoarse. "Stop looking at Twitter. It's just noise. We need to formulate a plan." "A plan?" Serena snapped, her voice shrill. "Johnny, you're trending, and not in a good way. The hashtag Jacama Isa Blackwood has 2 million impressions in 20 minutes. People are making memes of your face when the doors opened. You're a joke." "I am Johnny Blackwood," he shouted, causing a passing couple to veer away from them. "I am a visionary. Emily blindsided me, but she doesn't know who she's messing with. I have contingencies. I have liquidity she can't touch." He patted his pocket, feeling for his phone. "I need to call the pilot. We'll go to the Aspen house. We'll lay low, let the lawyers handle the injunction, and come back when the dust settles." He dialed the number for his private flight coordinator. "This number is no longer in service." The automated voice droned. He tried the direct line to the hangar. "Mr. Blackwood," the hangar manager answered, sounding awkward. "I've been instructed to inform you that the Gulf Stream has been grounded for maintenance, indefinitely." "Maintenance? It just flew yesterday." "It's a legal maintenance issue, sir. The tail number has been flagged by the ownership trust." Johnny hung up, his hand trembling. He looked at Serena. "Change of plans. We'll stay at the St. Regis tonight. Tomorrow, I access the Cayman accounts." He hailed a cab, an actual yellow taxi, something he hadn't sat in since 2008. The driver looked at him suspiciously as he loaded the garbage bags into the trunk. "St. Regis," Johnny commanded, as they slid onto the cracked vinyl seats. When they arrived at the St. Regis front desk, the night manager, a man Johnny had tipped thousands of dollars to over the years, wouldn't meet his eyes. "I'm terribly sorry, Mr. Blackwood," the manager said softly. "Your credit cards have been declined, all of them. The black card, the platinum, even the corporate travel card." "Run it again," Johnny hissed. "It's a glitch." "It's a code 10 decline, sir. That means pickup card. It's reported stolen or compromised. I'm supposed to confiscate them, but for old time's sake, I'll just let you leave." Serena let out a sharp, hysterical laugh. "You have no money. You literally have no money." "I have millions," Johnny insisted, sweating through his tuxedo shirt. "It's just frozen. It's a tactic. Emily is trying to squeeze me. I just need cash for tonight." He patted his pockets. He had a $20 bill and a breathless mint. They ended up at a Motel 6 near JFK Airport. The room smelled of stale cigarettes and industrial cleaner. Johnny sat on the edge of the sagging mattress, staring at the wall. Serena stood by the window, looking out at the highway. She was twisting the 4-carat diamond ring on her finger. "At least we have this," she whispered. She said it was stolen property, but possession is 9/10 of the law, right? "We can sell it. It's worth $250,000. That's seed money." Johnny looked up, a glimmer of hope returning. You're right. We sell the ring. We hire a shark lawyer. Someone dirty, someone Emily can't buy. We fight dirty. Serena looked at him. The look in her eyes was unreadable. Go to sleep, Johnny. You look old. Johnny flinched. He lay back, fully clothed, closing his eyes. He dreamed of the boardroom. He dreamed of Emily. But in the dream, she was a giant, and she was stepping on him. When he woke up the next morning, the sunlight was harsh, filtering through the thin curtains. "Serena," he called out. "I'm going to call Arthur Pence. He's the nastiest litigator in the city." "Serena?" The bathroom door was open. The room was empty. He sat up. "Serena." He looked at the nightstand. There was a note written on the motel stationery pad. "Johnny, my publicist says I need to distance myself from the narrative. I can't be the other woman to a broke man. It's bad for my brand. I'm going to stay with my sister. P.S. I took the ring. Consider it severance pay for the last 2 years. Johnny stared at the note. He rushed to the door, looking out into the parking lot. She was gone. The ring, the stolen company asset, was gone. He was alone, in a Motel 6, with 4 bags of laundry and $20. And then his phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Good morning, Johnny. The board meeting starts at 10 a.m. You're invited as a guest. Don't be late." Emily Johnny spent his last $20 on a fresh shirt from a discount store down the street and a subway ticket back to Manhattan. He looked disheveled. His eyes were bloodshot, his stubble was grey, and he carried the scent of desperation. He arrived at Blackwood Tower at 9:55 a.m. The security guards at the front desk, men he had employed for a decade, blocked his path. "Mr. Blackwood," the head of security, a large man named Tiny, said apologetically, "I can't let you up without a pass." "I own the building, Tiny," Johnny screamed, his composure finally snapping. "Actually, the building is owned by Nebula Holdings," Tiny corrected. "We have a visitor pass waiting for you. 45th floor only. Escort required." Johnny grabbed the plastic badge. It stung his pride more than the slap in the face would have. When he entered the boardroom, the atmosphere was funereal. The long mahogany table was fully occupied. The board of directors, 12 men and women Johnny had hand-picked, sat in silence. At the head of the table, in Johnny's chair, sat Emily. She looked fresh, rested, and terrifyingly calm. She wore a cream-colored suit that screamed executive power. Beside her sat Martin Sterling, her lawyer. "You're late," Emily said, not looking up from her papers. "I was, detained," Johnny said, pulling out a chair at the opposite end of the table. "Let's cut the theatrics, Emily. You made your point last night. You embarrassed me. Bravo. Now let's talk about reinstatement." One of the board members, a man named Clifford who had been Johnny's college roommate, cleared his throat. "Johnny, there is no reinstatement. We voted this morning. It was unanimous." "Unanimous?" Johnny looked around the table. "After everything I did for you, I made you all rich. You also exposed the company to a massive liability lawsuit regarding the misappropriation of funds for personal use," Emily said. "Specifically the Serena account. We've audited the books, Johnny. The penthouse in Tribeca, company expense, the trips to Bali, research and development. Please, it's fraud." "So what?" Johnny sneered, leaning back, trying to project confidence he didn't feel. "Fire me." "Fine. I still own 30% of the stock. I'll cash out. I'll take my payout and start a competitor. I'll build something better, and I'll crush you." This was the moment Johnny had been clinging to. He was the genius. He was the visionary. They were just money managers. Without him, Blackwood & Co. was nothing. Emily finally looked up. She took off her reading glasses and set them on the table. "That's the thing, Johnny," she said softly. "You think you're the genius, but you have a selective memory." She nodded to Martin Sterling. The lawyer slid a thick document down the long table. It stopped perfectly in front of Johnny. "What is this?" Johnny asked. "This is the original patent filing for the Blackwood algorithm," Martin explained. "The core code that predicts market trends. The code that is the foundation of this entire multi-billion-dollar company." "I know what it is," Johnny snapped. "I founded the company on it." "Look at the inventor line, Johnny," Emily said. Johnny looked. He squinted at the document, dated 18 years ago. "Inventor, Emily Vance." "Vance," Johnny muttered. "Your maiden name." "You were the salesman, Johnny," Emily said, her voice devoid of emotion. "You were brilliant at it. You sold the vision. But I wrote the code. I spent nights in the dorm room coding while you were out partying with investors. When we incorporated, I assigned the license to the company, but I retained the ownership of the intellectual property in a separate holding trust." Johnny felt the room spinning. "But we're married. It's marital property." "Not if the trust was established before the marriage," Martin interjected smoothly. "Which it was. By 3 days." Emily folded her hands. "Here is the situation. As the owner of the IP, I am revoking the license for Blackwood & Co. to use my algorithm, effective immediately, unless certain conditions are met." "You'd kill the company," Johnny gasped. "You'd tank the stock. You'd lose everything, too." "I wouldn't lose everything," Emily corrected. "I'd lose the company value, yes. But I can license that code to Google or Goldman Sachs tomorrow for $1 billion cash. I'll be fine. The board, however, well, their stock options would be worthless." She looked at the board members. They looked terrified. They were hostages, and she was the one holding the detonator. "So," Emily continued, turning her gaze back to Johnny, "the board has agreed to my terms to keep the license active." "What terms?" Johnny asked, his throat dry. "Term 1, you resign permanently. No golden parachute, no severance. Term 2, you sell your 30% stake back to the company for a nominal fee. Term 3, you assume full legal liability for the embezzlement investigation, sparing the company from criminal charges." "A nominal fee?" Johnny laughed nervously. "My shares are worth $400 million. "The offer is $1 per share," Emily said. "Take it, or I pull the license. The stock goes to zero, and you go to federal prison for fraud, without a dime to pay for a lawyer." Johnny looked at Clifford. "You can't let her do this." Clifford looked down. "It's business, Johnny. She holds the cards." Johnny stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. "I'm not signing anything. I'm going to fight this. I'll find a lawyer who can tear that trust apart. You think you've won, Emily. You haven't seen anything yet." "I expected you to say that," Emily said, opening a folder. "That's why I invited a special guest. Security." The doors opened again. 2 men walked in. They weren't police. They were IRS agents. Johnny recognized the badges. "Mr. Blackwood," the lead agent said, "we received an anonymous tip regarding an unreported offshore account in the Cayman Islands under the name Serena Holdings, along with a ledger of laundered transactions." Johnny's eyes bulged. He looked at Emily. "I told you, Johnny," she whispered, leaning forward so only he could hear. "I was the one who crunched the numbers. I knew where every penny went. I didn't report you then because I loved you. But yesterday you made it public. Now I'm just a concerned citizen complying with the law. You reported me to the IRS," Johnny choked out. "You have a choice," Emily said aloud. "Sign the deal. Sell the shares for the nominal fee. I'll use my influence to categorize the Serena account as an internal clerical error and repay the funds myself, making the IRS audit go away. You walk away with nothing, but you walk away free. Or walk out that door with those agents, face 10 to 15 years for tax evasion and embezzlement, and I destroy you anyway. The room was silent. The air conditioner hummed. Johnny looked at the agents, then at the document, then at the woman he had called boring and safe just 24 hours ago. He picked up the pen. His hand shook violently. "One condition," Johnny whispered. "You're in no position to negotiate," Martin said. "Let him speak," Emily said. "The car," Johnny said, his voice breaking. "I want the Porsche back. I can't leave here on the subway." It was pathetic. It was a crumb. But it was the last shred of his ego. Emily looked at him with a mixture of pity and disgust. She wrote something on a piece of paper and slid it to him. "Sign the papers," she said. Johnny signed. He signed away his company, his fortune, and his legacy. "The keys are at the front desk," Emily said. "Goodbye, Johnny." Johnny walked out of the room, past the IRS agents who stepped aside, past his former friends who refused to look at him. He went down the elevator, retrieved the keys, and walked out to the parking garage. There it was. His Porsche 911, sleek, silver, beautiful. He got in, the smell of leather comforting him. He started the engine. At least he had this. He could drive to the coast. He could start over. He was Johnny Blackwood. He revved the engine and drove toward the exit barrier. He swiped the parking pass. The barrier lifted. As he drove out onto the street, his phone buzzed. A notification from the car's internal system. "Alert! Remote repossession protocol initiated." What? Johnny stared at the dashboard. The engine cut out. The steering wheel locked. The car rolled to a halt in the middle of Fifth Avenue traffic, horns blaring around him. A text appeared on the dashboard screen. Car lease transferred to Serena Kyle. Pickup scheduled for 12:14 p.m. Johnny screamed. He pounded the steering wheel until his hands bruised. Emily watched from the window of the 45th floor. She watched the silver car stall in traffic. She took a sip of her sparkling water. "Did you really give the car to the Mistress?" Martin asked, impressed. "I sold the debt on the car to a collection agency," Emily smiled. "And then I tipped off Serena that if she paid the transfer fee, she could have it. It keeps them fighting each other instead of fighting me." "Brilliant," Martin said. "So, what now? We have the company. We have the assets. You've won." Emily turned away from the window. Her face darkened. "I've won the war, Martin. But Johnny hasn't suffered enough. He still thinks he's a victim. He still thinks he can come back." She walked to her desk and pulled out a file marked Project Phoenix. "Johnny is going to try to start a new venture. I know him. He's going to try to leverage his old contacts. I want to make sure that every door he knocks on slams in his face. And I know exactly who he's going to call next." "Who?" "His brother," Emily said. "The one he betrayed 10 years ago. The one who swore he'd kill Johnny if he ever saw him again. Let's arrange a family reunion." Johnny Blackwood had flown on private jets to Davos, dined with prime ministers in London, and sunbathed on yachts in the Mediterranean. He had never, until this moment, ridden a Greyhound bus to the industrial wastelands of Newark, New Jersey. The bus smelled of diesel and despair. Johnny sat in the back, pulling his trench coat tight. It was a cheap coat he'd bought at a thrift store, a far cry from the cashmere he was used to. He had spent the last 3 days sleeping in a 24-hour diner, nursing a single cup of coffee, plotting his revenge. Emily had taken his money. She had taken his reputation. She had taken his company. But she had forgotten one thing. The Blackwood bloodline was resilient, and Johnny wasn't the only Blackwood. The bus hissed to a halt in front of a chain-link fence topped with razor wire. A rusted sign creaked in the wind. SB Iron and Salvage. Johnny stepped off into the mud. This was where his brother, Sebastian Bash Blackwood, had ended up. 10 years ago, when their father died, Johnny had produced a will that left the entire estate to him, cutting Sebastian out completely. Johnny had told everyone Sebastian was a drug addict, unstable, a liability. The truth was, Sebastian just wanted to build cars, and Johnny wanted to liquidate the assets to start his venture capital firm. He had forged a signature on a modified will, a secret he had carried to the grave, or so he thought. Johnny walked through the maze of crushed cars. The air tasted of rust and oil. Inside the corrugated metal office, a man was welding a motorcycle frame. Sparks flew in a shower of orange. "Sebastian!" Johnny called out. The welding stopped. The man lifted his mask. Sebastian was everything Johnny wasn't. He was huge, covered in grease, his arms sleeved in tattoos. His face was scarred, but his eyes were the same piercing blue as Johnny's. "You have 5 seconds to give me a reason not to beat you into a coma," Sebastian said calmly, setting down the torch. "I need your help," Johnny said, holding up his hands. "Emily. She took everything. She destroyed me, Bash, just like I destroyed you." Sebastian laughed. It was a dry, barking sound. "You destroyed me. You stole my inheritance, Johnny. You left me with nothing but a toolbox, and now you want help?" "I know where the skeleton key is," Johnny blurted out. Sebastian froze. The skeleton key was a family legend. Their father, a paranoid genius, had supposedly hidden a bearer bond account in Switzerland, unrelated to the company assets. A doomsday fund worth $50 million. But it required 2 biometric keys to access, Johnny's fingerprint and Sebastian's retina scan. They had never used it because they hated each other. "I have the account number," Johnny lied. He didn't have it, but he knew Emily kept their father's old journals in the library. He could get it. "We access the money. We split it 50-50. 25 million each. I use my half to crush Emily. You use your half to buy whatever this is." He gestured vaguely at the junkyard. Sebastian stared at him, wiping grease from his cheek with a rag. "You're desperate." "I'm vindictive," Johnny corrected. "She humiliated us, Bash. She's running the company Dad built. She's letting the Blackwood name be run by a woman who isn't even blood." Sebastian was silent for a long time. He walked over to a mini-fridge, grabbed 2 beers and tossed one to Johnny. "Emily came to see me," Sebastian said. Johnny's heart stopped. "When?" 3 years ago, when I was about to lose this place to the bank." "And?" "She offered to pay off the mortgage," Sebastian said, cracking his beer, "in exchange for me staying away from the press. She knew about the forged will, Johnny. She suspected it." "She knew?" Johnny whispered. "She suspected," Sebastian corrected. "But she didn't have proof, so she paid me hush money to keep the stock price stable." He took a swig. "I took the money." "Then you hate her too," Johnny said, seeing an opening. "She bought your silence. She treated you like a peasant." "She treated me like a human," Sebastian said. "Which is more than you did." "Bash, listen to me," Johnny pleaded, stepping closer, the mud squelching under his loafers. "I can get us 50 million, tonight. But I need you. I need your eyes for the scan. We get the money, and we disappear. We win." Sebastian looked at his brother, shivering, broken, desperate. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. 50 million? Sebastian asked. "Yes." "And you need to get into the house to get the journal with the codes?" "Yes. but the security system recognizes me as a threat. I need you to bypass the perimeter. You built the security grid for the estate back in the day. You know the back doors." Sebastian finished his beer and crushed the can in one hand. "All right, brother," Sebastian said. "One last job. But if you screw me, I put you in the car crusher. Understood?" "Understood." Johnny exhaled, relief washing over him. He had him. He had the muscle. Now he just needed to execute the heist. The plan was set for midnight. The Blackwood estate in the Hamptons sat on a cliff overlooking the ocean. It was a fortress of glass and steel. Johnny and Sebastian parked the battered tow truck a mile down the road and hiked through the woods. Johnny was sweating despite the cold. Sebastian moved with surprising stealth for a big man. "The perimeter sensors are thermal," Sebastian whispered as they reached the stone wall. "But there's a blind spot near the pool house maintenance shaft. I coded it that way, so I could sneak girls in when we were teenagers." "You never told me that," Johnny muttered. "I didn't tell you a lot of things," Sebastian replied. He pulled a rugged laptop from his backpack and plugged it into an external junction box disguised as a landscape light. "I'm looping the camera feed," Sebastian said, his fingers flying over the keys. "You have 3 minutes before the system does a handshake refresh. Get in, get the journal from the library safe, and get out." "The safe combination?" Johnny asked. "It's Emily's birthday," Sebastian said. "She never changes it. She's sentimental." Johnny scaled the wall, adrenaline flooding his system. He felt alive again. This was a high-stakes merger, just with more cardio. He slipped through the unlocked patio door of the pool house and sprinted across the lawn to the main house. The library was dark, illuminated only by the moonlight filtering through the floor-to-ceiling windows. Johnny moved to the heavy painting of the 18th century ship above the fireplace. He swung it open. The safe was there. He punched in the numbers. 0512. Click. The light turned green. Johnny pulled the handle. The heavy steel door swung open. It was empty. No money, no jewelry, and definitely no journal containing Swiss bank codes. Instead, sitting alone on the velvet shelf, was a baby monitor. "Hello, Johnny." Emily's voice came through the monitor, crystal clear. Johnny froze. He stared at the device. "Did you really think I wouldn't change the safe combination after the divorce?" Emily's voice was amused. "Or that I didn't update the security grid Sebastian built 15 years ago?" The lights in the library slammed on, blindingly bright. Johnny spun around. Sitting in the high-backed leather armchair in the corner of the room was Emily. She was wearing a silk robe and holding a glass of red wine. And standing next to her, leaning against the bookshelves with his arms crossed, was Sebastian. Johnny looked back and forth between them. "Bash? What? How did you get in here so fast?" "I didn't," Sebastian said, his voice devoid of the roughness he had used at the scrapyard. "I've been here since dinner. I let you in through the gate." You set me up?" Johnny gasped, the betrayal hitting him harder than a physical blow. "I'm your brother!" "And she," Sebastian pointed to Emily, "is the only person who actually helped me when I was down. You showed up at my yard today with a lie about a Swiss account, Johnny. I called Emily the second you went to the bathroom." "There is no Swiss account, is there?" Emily asked, taking a sip of wine. "That was a bedtime story your father told you to make you ambitious." Johnny slumped against the fireplace mantel. "Why, Bash, I offered you millions." "Imaginary millions," Sebastian countered. "Emily offered me something real." "What?" Johnny sneered. "Money?" "A contract," Emily said. "Blackwood & Co. produces a lot of industrial waste. We need a dedicated recycling and salvage partner, a multi-million-dollar exclusive vendor contract. Sebastian isn't just a scrapyard owner anymore, Johnny. He's our new director of sustainability." Johnny looked at Sebastian. His brother, the dropout, the mechanic, was now an executive partner in the company Johnny built. "So what happens now?" Johnny asked, his voice trembling. "You call the police? Breaking and entering?" "Oh no," Emily said, standing up. She walked over to him. "Police are messy, and frankly, putting you in jail is boring. I want you to be free, Johnny." "Free?" "Free to watch us succeed," Emily smiled. "But we do have a parting gift for you." She reached into the pocket of her robe and pulled out a small, folded piece of paper. "This came in the mail for you today, redirected from the penthouse." Johnny took it. It was a letter from the New York State Bar Association. "What is this?" "Open it." Johnny unfolded the letter. Johnny Blackwood, license revocation, due to findings of moral turpitude, fraud, and the public admission of embezzlement. "You can never work in finance again," Emily explained. "No trading license, no board seats. You can't even be a notary public." "And," Sebastian added, "I checked the VIN number on that tow truck you drove here. It's stolen. I already called the cops on the truck. They'll be at the end of the driveway in about 5 minutes. "You're sending me to jail for a stolen truck?" Johnny shouted. "No," Sebastian shrugged. "I'm letting you run. If you run fast enough through the woods, you might miss them. But you better start running now." Emily checked her watch. 4 minutes, actually. The local precinct is quite efficient. Johnny looked at his brother. He looked at his ex-wife. He saw a united front, a family he was no longer part of. He didn't say a word. He turned and bolted out the patio doors, sprinting across the manicured lawn, scrambling over the stone wall, and plunging into the dark, thorny woods. As he ran, branches tearing at his cheap coat, he heard the sirens wailing in the distance. He was 42 years old. He had an IQ of 140. He had once been worth $1 billion. And now he was running from the police in the dark, terrified, while his wife and brother toasted to his demise in the warmth of his former home. But as Johnny lay in a ditch, waiting for the police cruiser to pass, a dark, cold resolve settled in his chest. They had made one mistake. They had left him alive, and Johnny Blackwood had one card left to play, a card so dangerous, so self-destructive, that he had never dared to touch it. Until now. He reached into his sock and pulled out a tiny waterproof USB drive. It wasn't the Swiss codes. It was something he had stolen from the company servers 5 years ago. The black box. The unencrypted client data of every major politician and CEO they had ever worked with. Emily thought she had won the game. Johnny was about to flip the board over. Johnny Blackwood lay shivering in the cold, damp ditch for what felt like hours. The police sirens had faded, replaced by the chirping of crickets and the distant roar of the ocean. He clutched the tiny USB drive in his hand, the black box. It was his last, most volatile weapon. He had compiled it over years, a meticulous backup of every sensitive client file, every questionable lobbying effort, every insider trading tip that had ever crossed his desk. He had called it his mutually assured destruction file, something to keep everyone honest, especially himself. He never thought he'd have to use it. He finally stood up, aching and mud-stained. He couldn't go back to the scrapyard. He couldn't go to any of his old haunts. He needed a place to lie low, a place where no one would recognize him. He walked for miles until he reached a desolate stretch of highway. He hitched a ride with a long-haul trucker to a small, nondescript town upstate. There, he checked into a rundown motel using the last of the cash he'd had stashed in his watch band. The next morning, his hands shaking, he found an old internet cafe, the kind of place with sticky keyboards and slow connections. He inserted the USB drive. He had planned to send the data to every major news outlet, every investigative journalist, every regulatory body. He would watch the entire financial world burn. If he couldn't have Blackwood & Co., no one would. Emily would be exposed, and so would everyone else. He would bring down titans. He would be remembered, even if it was as a villain. He opened the folder labeled Client's Black Box. Thousands of files, each containing secrets that could ruin lives, corporations, and political careers. He began drafting an email to a Wall Street Journal investigative reporter he knew. He attached the first few files, just a taste of the raw, unadulterated scandal. He hit send. A small window popped up on the screen. Sending. And then another window. File transfer failed. Remote wipe protocol initiated. Johnny stared, dumbfounded. What? His screen flickered. A single message appeared. Did you really think I didn't know about the black box, Johnny? Emily. The screen went black. The computer shut down. Johnny yanked the USB drive out. He reinserted it. Nothing. The drive was wiped clean, erased, useless. He felt a cold, crushing despair settle over him. How? How did she know? How did she always know? He staggered out of the internet cafe, blindly wandering the streets. He had nowhere to go. No money, no company, no reputation, no secrets, nothing. He found himself sitting on a park bench, watching children play. He had a sudden, vivid memory of Emily. Not the powerful executive who had just destroyed him, but the young, bright-eyed woman who used to bring him coffee while he worked late, coding in their tiny apartment. The woman who had believed in him more than he believed in himself. He remembered her face when he told her he was leaving her for Serena. Not the anger he expected, but a deep, profound sadness, a look of finality. He closed his eyes. He had been so blind, so arrogant. He thought he was the architect, the visionary. He was just the front man. Emily was the foundation, the structure, and the emergency failsafe. She had built him, and she had dismantled him, piece by painful piece. He pulled out his phone. It was almost dead. He had one number left to call. Not a lawyer, not a mistress, not a brother. He called his mother, the woman he hadn't spoken to in 3 years because he was too busy. Johnny, her voice was a hesitant whisper. Is that really you? Mom, Johnny choked out, tears finally streaming down his face. I messed up. I messed up everything. There was a long silence on the other end. I know, honey, his mother said softly. Emily told me. She called right after the gala. She was very upset. She said you needed to learn a very hard lesson about what truly matters. She told you? Johnny whispered, the finality of his defeat sinking in. She always had your best interests at heart, Johnny, even when you hurt her. She said she wanted you to hit rock bottom, to see what you really were, without all the money and the glamour. She said she hoped you'd finally become the man she married. Johnny hung up the phone. Emily hadn't just stripped him of his assets. She had stripped him of his illusions. She had orchestrated his entire fall, not just as revenge, but as a twisted, painful act of tough love. She hadn't wanted to destroy him completely. She wanted to rebuild him from scratch. But Johnny didn't know if he had anything left to rebuild. He was an empty suit, a hollow shell. He looked at the children playing, their laughter ringing in the autumn air. He had lost everything. He had traded a loyal, brilliant partner for a fleeting affair, and in doing so, he had destroyed his own kingdom. He finally understood. Emily hadn't just walked in with divorce papers and assets. She had walked in with a mirror, and she had forced him to look at the monster he had become. The sun began to set, casting long shadows across the park. Johnny Blackwood sat alone, watching the world move on, a man who once had it all, and now had absolutely nothing but the crushing weight of his own regret. His public proposal had been his grandest declaration of love. It had also been his most spectacular, self-inflicted execution. The King of Glass Houses had shattered his own reign. And there you have it, folks, the spectacular, jaw-dropping downfall of Johnny Blackwood, a man who thought he could have it all, only to learn that pride truly does come before a very, very public fall. Emily Blackwood didn't just win, she orchestrated a masterclass in revenge, turning betrayal into triumph with surgical precision. What did you think of Johnny's fate? Did he get what he deserved, or was Emily too harsh? Let us know in the comments below. We want to hear your takes on this epic drama. If you were captivated by this story, imagine what other secrets and scandals we have waiting for you. Don't forget to like this video, share it with anyone who loves a good twist, and most importantly, subscribe to our channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss our next shocking storytelling experience. Until next time, remember, in love and war, never underestimate the quiet one.